Hello all, good day. Today we'll be talking about United Food Brands Limited, or better known as BBQ Nation. This BBQ Nation operates in the QSR industry. The QSR industry has been in a lull from 2023 onwards. Up till 2023, Domino's or Jubilant Foodworks was one of the best players, growing at around 20% CAGR. Then they entered into a lull phase and the industry just collapsed, right? I mean, there was no growth, no volume growth, shifting into delivery, SSGs falling, and so on. But however, this seems to be an exceptional quarter, or a starting of an upside trajectory in Barbecue Nation. So let's discuss the results. The results were out day before yesterday. I mean yesterday, and the con call also happened yesterday. And yeah, let's go into it. Okay, so the Q4 FY26 revenues were at 360 crores, a growth of 23% year on year, and the overall store count stood at 262 stores. So before going into the financials and other details, for those of who are not aware of what Barbecue Nation is or what they do, so Barbecue Nation is a quick service restaurant. What is quick service? Quick service is basically fast food or dining in experience. They have three brands, majorly three brands, which is Barbecue Nation, Toscano, and Salt. Yeah, so these are the three brands which they have. Toscano and Salt are in the premium range, and Barbecue Nation is in the normal or the mid tier range. Okay, now moving into the numbers. For yeah, the revenue was up 23% year on year. The EBITDA was up 1.3%, and the EBITDA margins were down to 16% from 19.4%, and the net loss narrowed 27% to 15 crores a year. Yeah, so a bit of history about United Food Brands here. So until last year, they used to be called as Barbecue Nations Limited itself. That was their listed name also. But when they started opening new brands, and when they started opening new outlets, and when Toscano and Salt started becoming bigger, they wanted to rebrand themselves and called United Brands Limited, United Food Brands Limited. Uh, Now coming into the history of Barbecue Nation per se. Barbecue Nation had been growing at a very rapid rate in the until the 2020 until 2023 Q2, I mean 2024 Q2, I believe. They were growing at around 30-40% on a year on year basis, driven by very high SSG growth at around 20%. Then came a period of aggressive store expansion in tier 2 and 3 markets, which became costly for them at the end. So they had to close down a lot of aggressive store expansions which they had done in FY24. Yeah, this is a little history about the company. Now what they have done is, from August 2024, they have come up with a revival strategy, or a rebranding strategy, where they have focused on acquiring customers, improved their marketing spend, got their app in place, gotten better walk-ins, better volumes. We'll discuss all these things in the further slides. Let's move on. Yeah, so majorly the highlights were as follows. The year on year volumes were up 47%. Volumes here is basically the number of customers coming in. Delivery volumes were also up around 32%. Transaction volume was up 43%. Transaction volume here refers to the amount you spend on the amount you spend in the restaurant is called transaction volume, or the amount you spend for delivery is called transaction volume. Now coming to one of the major important things here is, out of the total delivery volumes, 90% of the delivery volumes comes through their own app. Imagine, right? मतलब जब Zomato और Swiggy मतलब crazy scale कर रहा है, these guys are building their own app, and they can remove the intermediaries and save on margins, and they have 90% of the volume coming through online volume coming through their own platform. Then comes the major big change in Q4 FY26 was SSSG. What is SSSG before going into the number? So same store sales growth is a metric which you have to track for every retail business. Every retail business where there are outlets, basically. That is the simplest way to put it. So SSSG is the number which means that, let's say you had 10 stores in the last year and you have opened 5 stores in this year. Because of the opening of 5 stores, your revenue would have gone up by, let's say, 50%. For a simple calculation, would have gone up by 50% because you had 10 stores last year and you have opened 5 stores दिस ईयर. मतलब आपका स्टोर काउंट 5 से ज़्यादा हो गया, मतलब 50% से ज़्यादा हो गया. तो even if you sold the same amount of goods in the 5 new stores, you would make 50% more revenue in this year. So that is the metric of sales store growth. Now comes SSSG growth. Now let's say your 10 stores were mature और आपका stores मतलब पुराने हैं और वहाँ पे बहुत ज़्यादा brand name है. तो what will happen is the stores itself will grow, right? So that number is exactly what same store sales growth depicts. So let's say in that 10 stores last year you had a revenue of 100 and in this year you have a revenue of 120 only from those 10 stores. So the SSSG here is 20%. So same store sales growth is usually calculated on those stores which have been opened for more than 1 year. So calculating it is calculated at a point of time, right? So मतलब अगर Q4 FY26 में कैलकुलेट कर रहे हैं तो वो लोग देखेंगे कि एक साल पुराने स्टोर्स कितने हैं तो उसका रेवेन्यू ग्रोथ कितना है. दैट इज़ द नंबर ऑफ 14%. सो व्हाई इज़ दिस इम्पॉर्टेंट इज़ for any consumer retail store, for any consumer retail business to open new stores, the major number which they have to track is SSSG. अब आप नए स्टोर्स कब खोलोगे? आप नए स्टोर्स तभी खोलोगे तब जब आपके existing stores are doing well, they are performing like crazy, right? That is when you have the money and you have the room to grow. So 14% is a very good number, very good improvement. It was 8.2% in the previous quarter. It was a good sign in the previous quarter itself, but it could have been an exceptional quarter. So it was good to wait until Q4 and look for the 14% number in this quarter. But the stock has already gone up by 40%. आज 20% का सर्किट लगा, अपर सर्किट. कल भी अपर सर्किट लगा था 20% का. नाउ many people think that ये सब फैक्टर इन हो चुका है, there is no room for the stock anymore, already 40% up गया है, अभी तो कुछ नहीं होगा. just see the chart of 3 years. मैं चार्टिस्ट तो नहीं बनना चाहता, but just saying there is room for growth. You never not buy a stock because it has gone up, right? That is where most of the people go wrong. They want to buy dirt cheap. आपको dirt cheap वही मिलेगा जो cheap है भाई. मतलब you cannot expect to get a engine like this at 10 PE or lying in the bottom where there is bedrock, there is nothing to go down. ऐसे levels पे आपको वही stock मिलेगा जो सस्ता होना चाहिए, जो नहीं होना चाहिए वो भागेगा. ठीक है? So exactly what I wanted to highlight here. Okay, let's move on. Okay, in the premium CDR segment, which is Toscano salt, their SSSG was 7% and the revenue growth in the premium CDR segment was 23%. However, the margins have gone down in the premium CDR segment because of aggressive expansion. इनके कुछ स्टोर्स they operate in UAE as well, and because of the Middle East crisis in UAE, their stores in Bahrain and Dubai were affected, and they had to and that also contributed to the margin losses here. Now coming to the store guidance and what is their plan for the FY27. So currently the store count stands at 262 stores, and out of this they are planning to open in addition to this they are planning to open 40 stores and take the store count to around 300 plus for FY27. And out of these 40 stores, around 5 stores will be for in the premium CDR segment, which is the Toscano and Salt. So with this gives a number of around 15% of store growth. So 15% store growth से आएगा, and SSSG guidance is given as in the lower higher single digit or early double digits. And this is a conservative guidance. जब इनको drill किया गया था तो he was like, I'm just giving a conservative number, man, so that you don't jump upon me in the next quarters and if you underperform. So yeah, it is a lower number. Obviously management is playing safe. आपका stock इतना पीटा पड़ा है तो you have to play safe. So what happens here is, I think they'll do a SSG of around 12 to 14% आराम से. At least 12% is my expectation. and the all the 40 stores here will be funded through internal accruals. So इस ये 40 स्टोर ओपन करने में इनको कुछ 140 करोड़ का खर्चा आएगा, which will all be funded by cash accruals which will happen over the year. इनका डेट अभी कुछ 100 करोड़ का है, and they are still going to maintain that debt level. They are not going to take any further debt for expanding stores. Good sign. Margins पे कोई प्रेशर नहीं आएगा. आई एम टॉकिंग अबाउट PAT margins. Now let's move forward. हाँ, the final conclusion slide, I would say, the risks and how the overall deal looks. The risks here is that EBITDA margin में थोड़ा contraction आ सकता है because of the scenario of the war, and the volumes grew by 40% in this quarter. I mean, they say that all the revenue growth was because of the volume growth which came in. But these volumes will sustain is a question, and it needs to be tracked. And one more risk here is that it's still a loss-making company. FY26 full year net loss widened to 61 crores versus 27 crores in FY25. Obviously, this was due to higher marketing cost and the revamp campaign which they did from August 2025. Now coming to one more risk here is that, which was highlighted in the con call, that you have a bad history of aggressive expansions. What is your take on that? So the management was like, we have learned from our mistakes in 2023. We are not going to aggressively expand at the rates we were in 2023. And yeah, so this was but this is a risk to be watched out, right? Because if your stores are not going to do well, that can happen again in as it happened in 2023. Then comes yeah, the interest burden. You can ignore that. That's a wrong point here. The last point here is how is the overall deal looking. The overall deal obviously looks a little costly after the stock ran like 40%, but at an overall level, without considering the stock rising like 40%, the deal looks good. अच्छा लगता, the SSSG growing at 14% is a very good thing. I hope it sustains. And also their the app which they have built, I hope they get the operating leverage from that too. Yeah, that is it for this video. Do let me know what do you think about the deal. Thanks for watching.